control outer space, and you control the world. Recent news reports suggest that China, Russia, and the US are caught in a new high-tech space race.
The next big war, if or when it comes, is going to be fought in two theaters: cyberspace and outer space.
But control of cyberspace is child's play compared to the domination of outer space. And the race between superpowers, as far as we know, is up for grabs. Plans to mine the moon for the experimental propulsion fuel helium-3 are already underway, as are plans to create weaponized satellites. But insiders claim that the US and other countries have already been secretly militarizing space for 50 years. Join us as we investigate the secret existence of a US Space Force. A global effort has begun. Secret files hidden from the public for decades, detailing every UFO account, are now available to the public. We are about to uncover the truth behind these classified documents. Find out what the government doesn't want you to know. Unsealed. Alien Files. Exposing the biggest secret on planet Earth. Since the early 1960s, we've experimented with how to travel off planet Earth. We've been to the moon, landed rovers on Mars, and sent probes beyond the edge of our solar system. To establish a permanent presence in space, we developed the International Space Station. To service the space station and resupply it with food, experimental equipment, and astronauts, the US successfully developed the Space Shuttle. But in 1986, something happened that many will never forget. January 28, 1986. The Space Shuttle Challenger is launched on a routine mission. But 73 seconds into the flight, something goes terribly wrong. An O-ring seal on one of its rocket boosters fails at liftoff. This leads to a breach of the shuttle's external gas tank. The massive aerodynamic forces acting on the shuttle as it escapes Earth's atmosphere expands the breach. And the result is a catastrophic failure. The Challenger disintegrates off Florida's coast above Cape Canaveral. 7 crew members die. The Challenger accident is a brutal reminder of the hazards of space travel and makes many in the aeronautical industry rethink the way we travel into space. The incident is also a defining blow to a top-secret group in the American space industry. Less than 2 years after the Challenger accident, an article appears in the New York Times that stuns many insiders.
So in 1989, the New York Times publishes an article that says that we had a cadre of 32 military-trained astronauts and a multi-billion-dollar budget going on for a shuttle program at Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's crazy.
A secret cadre of 32 astronauts who were outside of the normal NASA space program had been axed. And that associated with this, various facilities, effectively an entire secret spaceport, were also going to be mothballed.
The article cites the Challenger accident as the key reason the military is getting out of using manned space shuttles.
If we had a multi-billion-dollar military space shuttle program going on in Los Angeles and in Vandenberg, multi-billion-dollar, and we didn't know about it, nobody knew about this thing, what else could our government possibly have going on in space?
Once again, the government finds itself under suspicion.
They could have already had a military space force up there. We really don't know.
When we consider the story about the cutting of 32 astronauts from this covert program, I think there's a temptation to think, well, the program in its entirety has been axed. But in my experience of cuts within government, what actually happens is that a small part of the program is cut out to satisfy the financiers.
So could a Space Force exist? Absolutely. Could we hide it? Could the government hide that secret? Absolutely.
If a Space Force exists, when and why was it created? Unsealed case file. The Twining Memo. July 26, 1947. Less than 3 weeks after the famous UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico, U.S. President Harry Truman signs the most important act of the 20th century, the National Security Act. It leads swiftly to the creation of the CIA, the National Security Council, an independent Air Force, and the Department of Defense. 3 weeks earlier, four-star General Nathan Twining flies unannounced to Kirtland Air Force Base. Many experts believe he arrives to help cover up the Roswell UFO crash.
September 18th, 1947, the CIA is born. 5 days later, the Twining Memo comes out.
Nathan Twining wrote a memo which in many ways perhaps set the scene for what a lot of people claim has followed. And he said in his memo that UFOs were real. They are clearly under intelligent control, and they're often seen in close proximity of highly sensitive military establishments and particularly nuclear facilities. He said, for that reason, this subject must be studied carefully and taken extremely seriously.
The Twining Memo says we need to investigate the technology, but what do you do with that technology if it's real? What does it give you the ability to do? You have propulsion, you have other technologies like night vision and things like that. So what are you naturally going to do with that information? You're going to corral it, you're going to keep it from your enemies, like the Russians or whoever. You're going to get your best scientists on it, and you're going to run with that technology, and what's the next step? You're going to put it in a craft and use it to go somewhere. So Space Force is born.
General Twining may have seen the Roswell crash with his own eyes, but his reaction is to plan a way for America itself to get into space. Coming up, we reveal one of the very first top-secret spacecraft projects, a project conceived before NASA ever made it into orbit. This is Unsealed, Alien Files. Evidence may point to the existence of a secret, independent U.S. Space Force. But it's one thing to have a plan, and quite another to put it into action. Unsealed case file, the X-20 Dinosaur.
Starting in 1957, the United States Air Force started developing the X-20 Dinosaur. What this was a defense space plane, so to speak, that was going to have a variety of capabilities, or at least that was the intent.
The Air Force starts the Dinosaur program a year before the creation of NASA. And it has defense, not exploration, on its mind. The X-20 is allegedly developed for a variety of military missions, including satellite maintenance, reconnaissance bombing, space rescue, and as a saboteur of enemy satellites. When NASA is created, the new space agency develops the Mercury space capsules for exploration and ballistic re-entry. But the design of the Air Force's Dinosaur is eerily similar to the modern shuttle. It can allegedly reach Earth orbit at the speed of an intercontinental ballistic missile and return to Earth by gliding down under pilot control. It can land at an airfield instead of deploying a parachute and splashing down in the ocean, like NASA's capsules.
They spent to the tune of $5 billion in today's standards to develop a craft that could fly in space, potentially take out enemy satellites, potentially strike other countries, potentially do reconnaissance work, kind of a wide array of defense capabilities.
But the X-20 Dinosaur is reportedly plagued with design problems. Uncertainty over the development of its experimental booster rocket, which launches it into orbit, slows development to a halt. After a comprehensive program study in 1963, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara says, the X-20 Dinosaur did not have any real objectives for orbital flight.
Unfortunately, they really couldn't make the plane. They couldn't build it, and the project was eventually scrubbed.
The Air Force's decision to halt the program is a reversal of its previous policy. But could a secret industry have continued to develop the X-20 behind closed doors? In 2001, a hacker from the UK uncovers evidence that points to something many thought did not exist. Unsealed case file. Non-terrestrial officers.
Gary McKinnon was a computer hacker that allegedly got into NASA computers and discovered much more than he bargained for.
Between 2001 and 2002, UK IT expert Gary McKinnon allegedly gains illegal access to over 50 U.S. agency computer systems, including the secret NASA database.
What he claims to have found when he hacked into NASA computers was a list of non-terrestrial Air Force officers. He claimed that he had found pictures of craft.
He uncovered, according to him, documentation that proved that not only were aliens real, not only was NASA scrubbing out UFOs in their photos, but also that there was this secret space force that existed that could potentially travel to other planets, or that there were military personnel that were currently in space.
He found what he thought were ship names, but instead of being USS Enterprise, it's USS Enterprise, United States Spaceship.
Gary McKinnon alleges that NASA is actively involved in a massive cover-up.
Now, the names of these supposed ships are interesting in themselves, because one of them was apparently the USS Hillencutter. And Hillencutter was one of the people believed to be on the infamous Majestic 12 committee, the super secret body charged with keeping UFOs secret from the public and managing the whole UFO situation.
The problem remains, what exactly did McKinnon really see, and what evidence is being covered up?
So Gary McKinnon's hack really led to the rise of this idea that there is a secret space force, maybe part of a wider shadow government. I've even heard phrases such as a breakaway civilization used for this.
Coming up, we reveal evidence of an ultra-top secret spaceship, its mission, and its 2014 record-breaking flight remain classified. This is Unsealed, Alien Files. Many experts believe America has operated a secret space force for decades, with ultra-high-tech ships designed for a wide array of space defense capabilities. But what does one of its ships look like? And what is it really capable of? Unsealed case file, the X-37B. April 2010, the X-37B is launched. At less than 30 feet long and just 10 feet tall, the craft is not unlike a miniature space shuttle. Information about its mission is closely guarded. Insiders speculate that NASA and the U.S. Air Force have been secretly funding the project for decades. But the unmanned X-37B is now being developed by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The CIA claims the X-37B is performing secret reconnaissance, while the Air Force alleges that the X-37B's objectives are testing reusable space technologies. But many believe it is being used for other reasons.
Is it possible that the dinosaur program of the 1950s and 1960s that never came to fruition is now flying above our heads with the label the X-37B? With today's defense requirements, I wouldn't put it past them. We're told that the X-37's unmanned. So at this point, with their testing, they're not sending up anybody yet. But it is possible that the X-37 could be a small model of a much bigger craft that essentially could carry humans to space, essentially could create a space force that could fend off our enemies from the safety of the cosmos.
The X-37B shatters all previous records for space flights. In August 2014, it lands after an incredible 627 days in space.
For 2 years, a plane operated by NASA is traversing somewhere out there. We have no idea what it's doing. We have no idea what its mission is. What happened in that 2 years?
There are some aspects to the space program that are not being publicly declared.
What exactly is the mission of the X-37B? And are its capabilities limited to the Earth's orbit? Some experts believe the X-37B has the capability to reach the moon or even beyond, leading to speculation that the U.S. may already be developing secret off-world bases.
With the aura of secrecy around the X-37B, we can tell that it's one of the most heavily classified space missions that exists. We have no idea what its mission is.
But the level of secrecy surrounding the X-37B leads many to believe that its mission may be rooted in the origins of a secret space force.
The idea of a space force may be a far-fetched idea to really kind of comprehend, but history shows us this isn't a new idea at all. In the late 1950s, the Department of Defense was designing what they called Project Horizon, which was a military outpost that they were going to put on the moon.
In 1959, Project Horizon sets out to develop a 12-person outpost on the moon. Its purpose, to serve as a base to explore further into outer space. Officially, Project Horizon never materializes.
They wanted to do it 6 decades ago. Unfortunately, it just wasn't feasible. Today, may be a different story.
Coming up, a high-ranking retired Canadian defense minister shocks the world when he claims that the United States Space Force not only exists, but is armed and ready to attack. This is Unsealed, Alien Files. For years, many believed that the United States government is operating a secret space force with capabilities beyond the Earth's orbit. Until recently, it has been difficult to prove. But when retired Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer claims there is a shadow government functioning in outer space, it becomes difficult to ignore.
Paul Hellyer was the defense minister for Canada for many years. In 2005, he came out with a statement about UFOs because he had seen one, so he was convinced they were real.
He has gone on the record as saying not only are UFOs extraterrestrial, but there have been crashes, some vehicles have been recovered, and the US government does have a secret space force that he's actually concerned might one day end up taking hostile action against extraterrestrials.
Hellyer claims his concern for the security of planet Earth is the reason he has exposed the existence of a secret space force.
No military planner is going to want to leave any part of the battlefield undefended. So it stands to reason that as space is going to be an important part of any future war, you have to dominate space. So you need a space force, and that's probably going to be largely secret.
If you need to defend your planet, put a base here, put a base there, put a base here, and put a base there. It's simple logistics to warfare. Make sure you're protected from the outside. That way your enemy can't get in.
If a space force does exist, how far into the universe does it reach? Who controls it? And is it prepared to defend our world? This is Unsealed, Alien Files, exposing the biggest secret on planet Earth.